So, I wanted to talk about something important. Something very important to me, at least. And to a lot of people, this is something that honestly will never be a big deal for them. It will never be something that affects them physically or mentally, and I accept that. But for me, pornography was addicting and genuinely ruined my childhood and really ruined my life as I know it up until this point. And it's why I'm fighting now so harder than ever to just reclaim myself and build myself back up from this rubble that I've been under. Simply put, I don't want to ever touch porn again. I accept its existence, but I think that it is a poison. There's this Instagram account called Fight the New Drug, which describes it perfectly. That it is a drug, and that it's addicting, and it will consume you. And honestly, they've helped me a lot on this mental journey of mine. Mostly because they would just keep poking at me whenever I would scroll on Instagram. You know, a post of theirs would always show up eventually. And I feel like I just can't really stress enough how big of a problem pornography really is. And it really, really is. And I just feel like a lot of people don't take it as a big deal, you know? I'm scared even now to talk about it, not because I don't feel like people will accept me for it, and not because I feel like I shouldn't talk about it, but just because it genuinely really is one of those things that you could talk about it and talk about how bad of a problem it is for you, and people won't care. People don't see it as an addiction. They don't see it for what it is. But I do know that I think a big part of why I'm okay talking about this now is because I'm finally at a point where when I view myself and everything I did, all my actions, I look backwards. I'm not past them. I'm far from it. But I no longer feel embarrassed to admit what I was or what I felt or what I did. And to me, that makes a huge difference to how it was before. Because before it was always the case that I wasn't looking backwards, I was looking at who I was in the moment, and I didn't want to admit who I was. It was shameful. There was absolutely no distance at all between me and that version of me. Only a desire to change for myself and for love. But now I've been dealing with this for a while, and I can just say it out loud, I feel fine saying it out loud. And I just wanted to go through my experiences with it. I feel like, I don't know if it would ever help anyone. I don't know if it would ever help shed some light, bring some insight or what, but in a way, this video is for myself as well. I just kind of I want to talk. Talking helps me heal, ultimately. I was introduced to porn at an incredibly young age. I don't think I could tell you the exact age itself, but I vividly remember being exposed to it while within primary school. That meaning I was exposed to it before the age of 11. And I remembered it being in the stupidest forms at first. I remember being with my childhood best friend at the time at his house. We were Googling something. I think it was on YouTube, right in its infancy. Google something about Pokemon. and it was almost like a skit or something. You know, it was just a video that was grossifying the characters. It was sexualizing them. And, you know, I laughed at it as a kid. We both did. But, like, the fact that that was just there is kind of scary. And I also have, like, a very specific memory of finding a video about two characters from Left 4 Dead doing, like, way too intimate things. And I just also was around it in the real world. You know, I would hang out with neighbors who were older than me. And I remember things like seeing girls lift their tops up for other guys, like, from the area who were older than me. They all were. I was just around that stuff. I didn't pay it no mind at first, but, like, it adds up. I remember I had a next door neighbor. I think the 3 siblings. One of them was this girl who honestly might have been like 7 years older than me. And I remember her constantly saying things like, I know you want to kiss me, come and kiss me. And she would, like, always try to, like, pull me in for kisses and stuff. And I had, like, no desire to kiss her. But I felt like I was being sort of, like, forced upon. I remember one day on a trampoline as well. This was a couple of years later. I remember looking over at their house and seeing, like, her and a guy, like, unclothed through a window because they were, like, watching me jumping, and I think one of them waved at me. They were undressed, and I think since it was 2 years later, at that point I kind of knew what was going on. But basically, just bad influences were around me everywhere. It didn't have to just be porn, but sexualization was everywhere. I remember that I had been so badly influenced when I was just getting into secondary school. When I was 11 or 12, I just remember thinking to myself, oh, I can't wait until I'm able to masturbate. Because from what I've heard, it's so adult and good feeling. And I don't even really know what to say about that myself, to be honest. It's messed up. It's fucked up. You know, no child should ever have to be put into that place. That mindset. You know, it's abusive. It makes you a victim, whether you know it or not. And ultimately, I masturbated before my body was even ready for it. And I know that for a fact because when I would ejaculate, nothing would even come out. You know, I wasn't old enough for my body to produce it. I remember being 13 or 15, somewhere in that sort of age range. And I was on Instagram. I was joining groups online, making friends. And I remember making art of, like, my OCs, my characters, that it was basically porn. It was NSFW, just stuff. And I thought it was normal. I remember sending some of it to the people I was around. And, you know, some of these characters, like, I was a kid. I wasn't drawing my characters as adults half the time. Some of them were also kids. I didn't know better at the time. And it really just became my routine to do this, to also just help myself whenever I was down, lonely, or who knows what, you know, if I just wasn't having a good day. And I 16, and at that point, I was a wreck, and I didn't even know it. I would watch porn constantly, and it didn't have to just be porn of people. You know, it was furry stuff, monster stuff. I'd save photos and videos on my phone, its browser, my iPad, my laptops, and later on, even my computer. I would save folders of the stuff, all separated and organized. And I didn't ask for help. I didn't know to ask for help. I didn't think I had to ask for help. I didn't do anything about any of it because I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I thought it was entirely normal. And so in like a weird way, even though I was so ruined, I still had a positive outlook on life and the people in it. And then, with me being 16, I got an actual computer, an actual PC, one that I could actually play games on. And after 3 months of using it for YouTube and not really much else, I downloaded SCP Secret Laboratory, which is where I met all of my closest friends, who I am endlessly happy for. But at first, I met Thor and Assassino, and we played Rust. I was an edgy ass when XDA, the group actually formed into a server. I distanced myself because the volume of people put me off for whatever reason I had at the time. And so I stayed playing Rust and spent pretty much the whole year up until summer playing it. And I remember I met this group on it was like a roleplay server, and this group was called Storm, and it was like comprised of like 20-30 people, and I joined them out of dozens of other groups on there. So I met a lot of people, of course, and I remember one of them was a woman who interacted with me a lot. And if I'm being honest, I was a edgy 16-year-old from an all-boys school with near to no interaction with girls since I was 10 years old. And so I was obviously pulled to her. I mean, she was ultimately the person I was closest with throughout the entire time. And, I remember playing Far Cry 5 completely through with her at one point too. And I regret this, I never explicitly told her that I was 16, but I sounded and looked 16, and it just feels like it would have been impossible to not know that I was a minor. She had seen partial photos of me. She knew my name, my real life name, and could have Googled me because I didn't lie about my age or anything online. I had an Instagram, a Twitter with pictures of me on it. And even towards the end of our friendship, if you can call it that, she did admit to me that she knew I was around 18 some way or another. And I think that's because I mentioned that I'd have to choose some stuff for college eventually. What she told me though was that she was 27 and married, and I assume I don't really need to convince you why spending months with a minor while you're 27 and married isn't a good thing. And worse off is that we flirted a lot. She would send me cleavage photos of herself, asked if I wanted to save them, asked if she looked good in them. us act out like intimate things together. And I was a teenager. I didn't think it was that bad. I didn't care that she was married. I was just getting my first form of sexual gratification from someone other than myself. I remember at one point, some guy I barely remember anymore, he split me and her apart, and you'd think he'd be like some good Samaritan for that, but he blamed me for everything. He told me I was evil for making moves on her, you know, because she had she had a husband and stuff, and it wasn't because he didn't know I was a minor. It's not because he thought I was like in my 20s. He looked up my real name and knew who I was, that I was in secondary school. And instead of telling me what I should have heard, like, hey, you're a minor, she's a married adult, you need to fucking run away, he told me that I was the one who should have known better, and that he was stepping in to protect her from me. And I, of course, fought to stay around her. And she did too. She fought to stay with me. There was a moment where, like, she actually did create distance and listen to him, but then it didn't last one way or another. And we stayed friends for a while after that. And I remember him shunning me for it, saying I was evil for forcing her to be around me. I just always find that funny and so fucked up. I don't know when exactly or why, but at some point, something inside of me started to wisen up without me knowing it. You know, the school year had ended and I was preparing to go to college in September. But first, I went on like this trip thing called NCS. It means National Citizen Service. It's something you can go to after you're finished your GCSEs up in like the north of England. And, you know, I told her bye, that I'd talk with her after I'm back, because there wasn't any stress or tension in these messages, you know, like it was just sort of like, oh my god, I'll miss you, I'll see you later. But after I was done on NCS, I never called her again. I messaged her once or twice, and I think that's because it was her birthday, and I saw her in game once, ignored her, and then never talked to her again. And I think like a year later, I tried to add her on Steam again, and she questioned why, and I didn't respond to her. And I'm really thankful I didn't, because I don't know, it wouldn't, it obviously, I'm just glad I didn't. And I don't even know what to refer to the whole situation as. You know, I didn't push her away, I was never fighting against her. I was quite literally too blinded by all of the sexual poison in my life that now I just feel stupid for not breaking away from it sooner. A couple of years ago, I tried coming to terms with the fact that, like, it could technically be grooming, but it almost just feels wrong to call it that. I feel like I don't have the authority to be the one doing what it is. But with hindsight, I can tell you for sure that it was awful, if nothing else. And it just further added to me being ruined from it all. And I wish I could just say the bad influences ended from there, but they didn't. I left school, went to college, you know, so I was around men and women now. And I remember getting a crush on a girl in my class, and it was pretty much only for her looks. We had very little actually in common. She ended up seeing that I had a crush though, and kind of basically confronted me about it. And, I told her like I was interested in her. And so we tried a relationship, if you can even call it that. It lasted for a couple months where we honestly never really got along on things. We never like met in the middle. All we did was talk about different games we played, a show that she was really into, our art. Otherwise, we went on walks and like hung out in my house. And it was so bad that we broke up without really even needing to say it. We just stopped talking. It had absolutely no love in it whatsoever. And we also talked a lot about porn in that relationship. She drew a lot of it. She was into a hell of a lot of kinks. And I'm realizing now that she was sort of my first door into that world of things like kinks and how erotic things could be. I even remember that she would actually just do erotic roleplay with her friends while we were together. And I was around it all. It was very incredibly unhealthy that I didn't know it was wrong at the time because of how I'd already been brought up at that point. And I just stuck in that place, completely riddled with porn throughout my entire life. I didn't move anywhere from there. And then thankfully, finally thankfully, I had another relationship with someone incredibly special to me. Someone who I had liked for years. And they opened up this Pandora's box of bad influence and wrong within me. They showed me like how tainted my life had become. They made me realize I wasn't as good as a person as I thought I had been. And I'm not saying they called me a bad person. I just was a bad person. And they asked me questions about porn. How much I watched it, how often, which I lied to. I said it wasn't that big of a deal in my life. And weirdly, like, I believed it in a lot of fucked up ways. Even now, it just feels like it altered my brain chemistry to make me believe I wasn't as deep into it as I was. And I didn't want to lie to them, but I felt like I physically couldn't tell the truth and own up to who I was and how I had been for years. And that alone just really made me realize just how fucked up in the head I really was. Because at that point, it was like no one had ever showed me that I couldn't talk about it, and now I was being showed that I couldn't talk about it. And even within that relationship, I watched pornography for the first 2/3 of it. And like, to me now, that was cheating. It would still be cheating. It's cheating. It's terrible to do in a relationship. And if you're with someone and you guys watch porn, or one of you does, I genuinely think that you need to take a step back and just ask yourself if you think it's healthy. If having wandering eyes and a wandering hand is healthy for you in your relationship. Because I know for me that it's not something I will ever view as healthy again. And despite breaking her trust, with my lies. She still fought and fought to get me to open up and help dig out this pit of rot within me. They really made me realize just how bad I had got. They exposed it all. They made me realize that what I was doing wasn't normal. It wasn't something that everyone did like I originally thought it was. Because I really did go through my life thinking that I was just one of billions who did the same thing. And they made me realize how closed off I just was. And they really encouraged me to fix it all. And I wish I could say that I tried and did manage to fix things and that it was a happy ending. But unfortunately, it wasn't that simple. I hard stopped all of the porn intake in my life and tried really, really hard to pivot my life in an instant. And really all it did was make me feel like shit, made her feel like shit, and it just caused me to fall into the worst emotional period of my life, which I'm still ultimately going through. I still couldn't outwardly say the truth without what felt like immense effort being needed, and I ultimately was the one to give up. You know, I broke things off, I was overwhelmed and didn't know what I wanted in life. And after a couple weeks or months, I don't remember, I just fell right back into all of my bad habits. Thankfully not as deep as I was before, but I still failed. Pornography really has been there throughout my entire development. It defined me, defined how I viewed people, how I looked at them, how I saw them. It defined their worth to me. And it really just defined how I saw myself. And I hope none of you ever have to be in that place. And if you feel like you are right now, I honestly wish you the best. And I really believe that you can make yourself better. You can always come talk to me about things too. I will be here for anyone who needs it ever. You know, I'm 24 now, and I just turned the other day, yesterday, and I feel like in my own ways that I never really got to define who I am properly. I never got to really experience a childhood, but I'm being optimistic and hopeful in thinking that it isn't too late to be who I want to be, that I can still define myself as the person I want to be if I just keep pushing. And this is the first time in my life where I realize I'm alone and down, and I don't just have the urge to go off and watch something or touch myself in any way. And I'm capitalizing on it. Because even though I did fall back into my bad habits, I never lost that desire to change. That's why I'm here now, ultimately. For a while at times, that desire to change got buried deep within me. But every now and again, I'd keep having moments of wanting things to be different. And it's been stronger than ever since the Christmas just passed. I think it's part maturity, part regret, and part heartbreak, but definitely part hope. Even if I lost my outlook on life and on myself, I'm still glad that the trade-off was that I had my eyes opened. porn really is terrible, and it is directly abusing your natural biological desire to reproduce. And it convinces you it's fine and that it's natural. But I wish I could go back and re-experience the key parts of my life with this mentality and outlook rather than the one I had. Because I feel like I burned bridges that I would have given my life towards and would still give my life towards if I could. I really cannot stress enough how much of a battle it is to escape from it all. And once you actually just take a step back, you begin to realize just how absolutely over-sexualized and normalized everything is in life. Back when I initially tried to stop it all in one go, I had uninstalled so many forms of social media. Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. I had to create a whole new email because my internet cookies and recommendations were all poisoned. They were all sexualized and pornographic. And I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I made a new email. It helped a fucking lot. But even now, it's like I could see ads or photos of women, and I can feel that there is a frustration deep inside me that wants to be let out. They don't even have to be dressed in a way where they're showing anything off either. I've had to deal with the term that I've coined as rubber banding, where my mind will almost instinctively try to look people up and down for their sexual worth without me even needing to do anything. And I just hope you guys can understand how bad something needs to be able to rewire your brain's instincts and sense of worth. I've gotten so much better at it the last 2 years. But it's not gone, and without consistency, things like it won't ever truly fade. I just sort of hope that the future holds my true self within it. I believe it does. I have friends who will be there for me, always, of course. But I don't know how it'll go in the long term. Whether I'll be able to fully see things in a new light. Whether I'll get to actually experience true love while being myself. Whether I'll be able to just say something without twisting from the awkwardness or the grief or the regret, whatever it may be. But I can promise you that even now already, I see the world in a new light. You really start to appreciate things when you just break free from all the bullshit around you. And I believe that I can do this. And that belief will carry me forward. I love you all so much. Love from Orion.